Alright, so I recently finished playing through Pikmin 4, and this was another one of those really long time coming playthroughs for me personally. For reference, I played Pikmin 2 many years ago, I think before 4 was even announced officially, because there was that weird limbo with, I believe, that weird Miyamoto interview. So that's kind of important context because I'm kind of going to be comparing some things to 2, and I don't necessarily know a lot about 3 and whether certain things here were, streamlined or added in this game or 3. Either way, Pikmin for me was just one of those series. I don't know if anyone else had something like this where, I really enjoyed the second game. I picked up the other two right away. It was just such a fun, unique experience that I just didn't want to not have something similar yet, you know, fresh levels and that available. And with only one or two at the time other entries in the series, I just kept putting it off for, I don't know, I guess I was anticipating a rainy day or a huge craving to, play something like it again. And I don't know, now I decided, enough's enough and to start, getting back into it again. Very timely, strangely, too, because it got a surprise update when I was about two-thirds, three-quarters of the way through. I wound up not even downloading it. It was just some stuff like costumes and camera mode stuff and a hard mode, which I will say that is something I noticed more and more throughout my playthrough. Is I remember Pikmin 2 at points being a bit more challenging than I felt like this game ever really got. Especially, I'm remembering one of the late game caves, particularly the Empress Bull Black's fight. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Yikes, that was tough. You do have, a couple rematches of that in here too, but admittedly I cheated with Pikmin 2 to get 100% completion. I remember with that cave in particular, and maybe a few other of the late game ones. I don't remember what code or whatever I particularly used to sort of help me through something like that. But here, you thankfully had rewind, so if you really fucked up, you wouldn't really be stuck grinding to get your Pikmin population back up. That was always something that sort of worried me in the back of my mind playing through the Pikmin game I had previously played. And I wasn't sure if it was the game overall itself or if it was particularly the addition of Ochi. Based on my quick Google search, it seems to be more of the latter as the consensus. And it's still a really fun addition, but I can definitely see, especially to a lot of people, including myself, aren't necessarily willing to set aside resources and be inefficient to find a bit more of the challenge they may be looking for. So Ochi might not sit well with people who want a particular level of challenge. But I don't know, I used it as an opportunity to really strive for efficiency and, leaving no Pikmin behind. Nobody dies. So, some rewinding, even if it was only, one or two Pikmin lost. What's kind of nuts is, once again, I've only played the second and fourth game, and the caves in these games are such a central big part of the game and overall progression of things that, especially with Pikmin 3, I sort of just question how different it will be not having that major aspect of the overall gameplay loop. I do have to hand it to the developers, though. Once again, I don't know if some of this stuff was introduced or 3 or 4, But there's just some ideas that I would have never came up with, like how they made the Dandery challenge mode and somehow made Pikmin, of all things, able to have, a competitive multiplayer mode. The Dandery challenges were really fun too, where you essentially have a cave that's, a little more structured, limited resources, you have a time limit. And I'm not gonna lie, this doesn't happen with me a lot, but just learning how to be more efficient throughout the game and unlocking new skills in that, it was fun to go back to some of the challenges later on and try to strive for a higher score, shorter time, bigger medal, leaderboards. Would have probably been really fun with something like that too. Unfortunately, I didn't have the same energy to go back with the battles just because there's a lot less in your control, and you can get higher medals than that by having a huger margin of victory. But I didn't really think that was worth the effort. The night expeditions too, I remember seeing that they were in the game, but like I said, I liked Pikmin 2 so much, I already knew I wanted this game right away, so I wanted to keep whatever that was a secret. I was really curious as to, how they handled that. For those who don't know, it is kind of a tower defense-esque mode, and was also, more fun than I probably would have even thought if I knew that. One thing that I will say was a little misleading was that you do have a set of side missions, but it's not, a traditional side mission-esque approach they take. It's more of a completionist, checkbox, rewards-esque system. That being said, though, it was kind of fun and different from what I remember the series being. Having this big hub world and kind of, you don't really have any control of it, but as you rescue more people who travel to the planet, you have like a little colony almost being built. And that was kind of fun and rewarding to see, and different from the more isolationist-esque vibes, I guess you can say, that I got previously from the series. On a side note, I don't know if this is maybe a spoiler for Pikmin 3, but is there any particular reason why later in the game you have a mission where you're rescuing people who are clearly inspired on Alf, Brittany, and Charlie, the protagonist of 3, but they have different names? I don't get the point in doing that, and why they just wouldn't have used the original characters. Once again, as someone who didn't play 3, that kind of left me scratching my head a bit. But I guess what do I know? One other thing that felt a little odd, I guess, was particularly the Hero's Keep, I believe it was called, level. It was a good, fun level, but I feel like Pikmin in general has a very nature-y aesthetic, and that level didn't really have it at all, and it kind of seemed out of place. I would have rathered if they did something almost like nature taking back over the house or something like that, though, rather than having, a normal human house with no actual humans around. And hell, I feel like approach like that could have even inspired the community a bit to like craft theories and such as to what happened to our bigger sized humanity, I guess. I do have one minor, very minor complaint that was probably also kind of more just personal on my end too. I went for completion. I did 100% complete the game, and for me, there were just a lot of fake outs of it being the end of the game and of getting completion. Like, you have one in the main story, which I guess the weird part of that too is you're used to maybe only having one level left after, an ending fake out, but this case you had two. But then I ignored the Olimar story section because I honestly just kind of thought it was just a means to revisit Olimer's journals or cutscenes or something. I didn't think it was its own unique thing. But then I make it to the end of the game and I can't 100% complete because I don't have enough purple Pikmin and I don't have an onion. And then I cite, well, you had to do that to get the onion, so I did that. But then the onion didn't actually come from there. It came from another thing that you will unlock after beating the Olimar thing. And they were both pretty fun too. Like, I've been kind of nervous about Pikmin 1 in particular. That's why I started with 2. Because I know you're kind of on a time limit there. And I'm someone who normally takes their time and really goes through all the nooks and crannies of everything. But I don't know, if it's around the same pace as that mode, I think I'll be fine. I'm a little, more optimistic, I guess you can say, about that. And the challenge cave was fun too. It was probably the most difficult part of the game, especially a couple of the final floors of it. It's all Dandery challenges. Is that the only cave that was exclusively like that? I guess because I think it was normally one Dandery challenge per cave, but I'm not gonna lie, I even needed a guide for the last 2 or 3 floors just to figure out how to do it. I just couldn't figure the right way to go about it, but... And don't get me wrong, all of this content, like when I played it and that, was a lot of fun. And I wouldn't say I wasn't looking forward to more game, but when it's, you think you're at a point where, I probably just missed it somewhere. I just need to probably go to a place in a level, find it, get the onion, grind a few purple Pikmin, get this item, and I'm done in like a half hour. And then you're like... it's just not ending. It's not over when you kind of had the anticipation of being there. It was just kind of weird, and I don't know. I kind of hate that it wasn't exciting because I feel like normally it was something I had so much fun with. It would have been, but I guess it just depends on how it goes. And like I said, part of that's personal too. If I just, didn't make assumptions about what Olimer's story thing was, then I could have, known that before completing the main story and sort of had, expectations sort of get in line accordingly, I guess you can say. Overall, though, this game definitely didn't let me down. And like I said, I had high expectations with how I really enjoyed the second game, and I'm not going to lie, even fueled me to, want to dive into 2 and 1 more than I thought it would after finishing it. Once again, I feel like I say this so much here, but not planning to dive in right away, and hopefully I don't get distracted and get to it, reasonably soonish. But yeah, overall this is definitely a, series and gameplay concept loop, whatever, that, I wish there was more of. And that's, I guess, the way you want people to perceive your game and what you're going for, right?